also, there are other sites that have more of it, too, that I'm linked to. You know, can I do something that's just popping in my mind
Sure.
here? I do want people to have this film, to see this man. We interviewed Meyer extensively, his family members, skeptics, a whole thing. And I'll do something a little crazy, but we're in hard financial times, this country and this world. So we have a film, and it costs $20. Anybody that buys it, if they write the word free in the order, I'll give them a $25 CD of Meyer material that they will take them weeks to go through. Tons of information, and I'll send it for free. It's worth more than the film dollar-wise. So if anybody hears that and you want to get the film, and if you did, or I'm not sitting in front of orders or anything, but if somebody ordered anything tonight and they got the film, you just send me another email that says free, and we'll send you a gift so you get more information than you paid for. How about that? So that's my big promo.
Meyer, what does his family think about him?
Well, this is really interesting because a lot of people were always touting the fact that his wife divorced him and claimed it was a fraud. Well, in our film, we interview one of his sons, Atlantis, who talks about his childhood. We happen to have footage showing this kid when he's a little guy of, 6 or 7, holding up a drawing or a painting he did of one of the UFOs that he saw. And then his mother, who's supposedly the big opponent of the case, is sitting there describing her experiences. We have to remember that Meyer, his wife, and about 15 other people all took stress analysis lie detector tests, and all of them passed 100% that this was true. After many years of contention and people literally walking through their lives and their home and all, she apparently had it with him and had it with the whole thing, and they divorced. Now, he'd also been told years before that his marriage wasn't exactly going to be a piece of cake, but this was part of his destiny. So after this divorce, she was saying, everything's a hoax, and, he's models. Of course, nobody can find models, but that went down, and I put this in quotes, the beauty of this is you just have human beings at every level of this case. There's no perfect beings out there. The ETs have screwed up. Meyer screws up. His wife screws, and when you think something's going to go just perfectly this way, it goes south. So he doesn't pretend to be perfect. He doesn't pretend to be, all-knowing and without flaws or mistakes, because he says human evolution depends on mistakes. We all are going to make them, and we just have to acknowledge, correct our errors, and move on. It's going to go on like this no matter what level of development we're at. We will always make errors so that we can learn. Tell
me about Meyer's predictions of the financial collapse, which he talked about years ago.
Well, yes. I don't have it right in front of me right now, but on that 1958 letter, if you go into that, and it's linked on my website, August of 1958, Meyer, I think it's numbers 36, 37, 38, or 37, 38, 39, he talks about financial irresponsibility, executives getting offensively outrageous $1 million payments and all this, and then that countries will begin to go bankrupt because of mismanagement of funds. Now, we know Iceland went bankrupt recently. This letter was from 58. It's been on my website for about 2 years, way before Iceland going bankrupt. As I also said in 2006, he told me when I said to him, or I asked him, actually, I said, Billy, is the Iraq war, is that fundamentally about oil? And he says, no, not fundamentally. He said, fundamentally, it's about your dollar. And this is where he said to me, when things go a certain way, you might as well roll cigarettes with your paper money, because the U.S. currency is going to collapse, and along with that will have an effect in the world and all of this financial chaos. And then in something else, just maybe from last August or September, he's told about the collapse of the banks and how this will impact the insurance industry, and how Europe is going to be really adversely affected by this, and how all of this stuff that's tied in then to petroleum. And when we talk about earthquakes and volcanoes, we're also talking about petroleum. And this is one of the things that got me to understand in the 1980s what this case was about, that it wasn't so much about UFOs. And let me explain that. When I was reading this material, I was fascinated by all the information. He was being told this and that. And I stuck the stuff under my bed for 2 years. After, in 1986, I read everything, and I was just always thinking about it. I opened up the newspaper one day in 1988, and there was an article. And it was about the connection between A-bomb testing and the ozone damage. It was a new discovery from Lawrence Livermore National Labs. But as I read it, I said to myself, why do I already know this? It's not new. Even the percentages, I know this. So I reached under the bed, I pulled out the Meyer material, and there in the first 100 pages was this information from 1975. Well, that was 13 years before this new discovery.
Jeez.
But then Meyer refers to first being told about it in the 50s, and indeed, when we find the 1951 and 58 letters, it's in there too. So we're talking 30-some years. But then I start to watch the newspapers and the television for stuff, and one day there's another article in a paper about oil extraction and earthquakes tied together.
Mm-hmm.
Paul Siegel, a scientist from Stanford, I think his name was, and I read that and I thought, wait a minute, yep, it's in the Meyer material. So this is all going to tie into very current stuff. So what they had told him, just as clear as day, and what he published, when you extract petroleum and natural gas from the earth, you upset the tectonic plate balance and structure. When you overbuild cities, when you put huge dams in places that nature never intended trillions of tons of water to sit, you upset the tectonic structure. This will lead to megaquakes and volcanic eruptions. Now, you know, in China a few weeks ago, there was a big earthquake.
Yep.
And what caught my eye, George, was that there was a little thing that said scientists find human cause or something.
Mm-hmm. Had to do with the water in the dam.
Yes.
Yeah.
And here we have in published papers and documents and books with copyright dates all over them, Meyer warning about this as clear as day. So what they're saying here is we have this interlink with our environment on levels that we don't really appreciate. We are creating our disasters. And Meyer, of course, talked about global warming 50 years ago. And more recently they said, while global warming is a naturally occurring phenomenon, it is now 3-to-1, 75% man-made. And all the things, the sea levels, they said by 2026 will be up 5 feet. So Al Gore, bless him, he's not the first one, and he's not making it up. We do have these problems. And then you look at the petroleum thing and you go, well, he's talking about the fact that the petroleum reserves are actually depleted. This is what he was told last year. I think it was last year. And they said, you have to understand how this is going to play out. The costs will go way up. Ultimately, you're going to have a restriction in travel, in mobility, your machinery, food transport. This is connected to everything. And if the greedy people don't bring forth and allow alternative technologies, you're all in for a very, very bad time that will be catastrophic. It will lead to famines, wars, water shortages, people being stranded. Now, this isn't to promote doom and gloom. It's the handwriting on the wall. And any of us, if we think about it, well, if you use this all up and if the prices go up and you can't afford it, cause and effect everywhere. And if I can throw one other thought in, because I heard a commercial on the station, and you were talking about a concern that there are parties that want to, decimate the populations.
Right.
Now, here's something that'll go, a counter idea for population reduction. One of the core issues in the Meyer case, they claim that overpopulation is our core problem. Whoa, do they want us to kill each other off?
How do we take care of that situation?
They say it's like this. Even though we're pretty too far down the road, a cessation of births so that the natural attrition, the natural elderly dying off, we don't replace people. Let the population naturally decline through restriction, birth measures. And so when we reach levels that are manageable, because we are on a finite object, we are on the speck of lint called Earth that has only so much. Because we are birthing so many people literally per hour, per second, whatever it is, the resources don't grow, they diminish. And that puts us against each other and against the environment. And has nothing to do with the elite wanting to kill us off. We're doing a better job of it than they ever could.
We'll be back with phone calls next with Michael Horn, representative of Billy Meyer, next on Coast to Coast AM.